A brief summary of our chapters are: Odysseus and his men leave Troy. They go to the land of the Lotus Eaters and stay there for months. They arrive at the island of the Cyclopes and stab him in the eye. The Aeolians give him a bag of wind, and the crew opens the bag. Circe captures the men and turns them into pigs. Then they arrive in the underworld. Circe tells Odysseus of two paths. They go to the battle with Scylla and Charybdis. They're in a storm sent by Poseidon, and then Calypso captures the men. Important characters in our chapters are Odysseus, the hero of our story. Penelope, the wife of Odysseus, who he is trying to return to. Aeolus, who is the ruler of the winds, and during Odysseus' travels gave him a bag of winds. Elpenor, a deceased crew member who Odysseus sees in the underworld. The Lotus Eaters. The Lotus Eaters are a tribe of people Odysseus and his men found during their travels. Polyphemus, the Cyclops son of Poseidon, who was blinded by Odysseus. The Sirens, the elusive sea creatures who try to veer men off of their paths. Calypso, a nymph who kept Odysseus and his men for years. Scylla and Charybdis, sea creatures who tried to kill Odysseus and his men. Poseidon, the god who cursed Odysseus' journey back to Ithaca. Circe, the goddess who turned Odysseus' men into pigs and sent him to the underworld. Odysseus is a strong, muscular, and handsome man. His motivations are being heroic and returning home to his family. Even though Odysseus is gone for 20 years, all throughout his journey, the only thing that keeps him alive is the thought of his wife and son waiting for him. His conflicts are when people try to defy and outwit him, but his main conflict was the trials on his return home. Odysseus is very arrogant, cocky, and egotistical. After Odysseus blinded Polyphemus, he revealed his identity, so everyone knew it was him who defeated the Cyclops, thus proving how arrogant he is. His symbols are his bow, the sea, and Ithaca.
Poseidon was the handsome ruler of the sea who was always depicted with his three-pronged trident and sometimes a boulder encrusted with sea creatures. Poseidon's motivation is the fact that Odysseus stabbed Polyphemus, his son, in the eye, and his conflict is cursing Odysseus' trip home from Troy. Poseidon curses Odysseus' journey home, making him go through many hardships and tests that are meant to kill him. Even if he survives, all of his crew will be dead and he will have spent many years on his journey. His symbol is the three-pronged trident.
Circe. Circe was a beautiful and enchanting dark-haired goddess of witchcraft. Circe's motivations would be anything related to witchcraft. Sadly, witchcraft made a victim out of her, and her nights consisted of being in fear of the visions she saw in her house. She was also a specialist in herbs and knew how to use them for magic. Circe turned Odysseus' crew into pigs because of their terrible attitudes and manners at dinner. She is also the one that orders Odysseus to go to the underworld. Son of Laertes and seed of Zeus, resourceful Odysseus, you shall no longer stay in my house when none of you wish to. But first there is another journey you must accomplish and reach the house of Hades and of revered Persephone, there to consult with the soul of Tiresias, the Tevon, the blind prophet, whose senses stay unshaken within him, to whom alone Persephone has granted intelligence even after death, but the rest of them are flittering shadows. Circe's symbols are a staff or a wand.
Polyphemus. Polyphemus was the son of Poseidon. He was a one-eyed, giant, man-eating cyclops. Polyphemus' motivation was to get a good hearty meal. He didn't care who Odysseus was. Polyphemus' conflict was when Odysseus tried to escape and he was not able to. Odysseus stabbed him in the eye with a steaming, sharpened stake and blinded him. Hear me, Poseidon, who circles the earth dark-haired, if truly I am your son, and you acknowledge yourself as my father. Grant that Odysseus, sacker of cities, son of Laertes, who makes his home in Ithaca, may never reach that home. But if it is decided that he shall see his own people and come home to his strong-founded house and to his own country, let him come late, in bad case, with the loss of all his companions in someone else's ship, and find troubles in his household. So he spoke in a prayer, and the dark-haired god heard him. And his symbol was an eye on the forehead and blindness.
Archetypes. Setting sun representing death. Odysseus made a sacrifice to the dead so that he may enter the underworld at sunset. But when the sun went down and darkness was all over the earth, we got into the deep waters of the river Oceanus, where lie the land and city of the Cimmerians, who live enshrouded in mist and darkness, which the rays of the sun never pierce, neither at his rising nor as he goes down again out of the heavens. But the poor wretches live in one long melancholy night. The color red, representing blood and sacrifice. Odysseus and his men gouged Polyphemus' eye to escape his capture. Even thus did we bore this red-hot beam into his eye, till the boiling blood bubbled all over it as we worked it round and round, so that the steam from the burning eyeball scalded his eyelids and eyebrows, and the roots of his eyes sputtered in the fire. Water, representing death. Odysseus and his men have the option to try and make it through the perils of the Wanderers, or battle Scylla and Charybdis. Odysseus chooses to forgo the catastrophic series of rocks and attempts to battle Scylla. On the one hand, there are some overhanging rocks against which the deep blue waves of Aphrodite beat with terrific fury. The blessed gods can call these rocks the Wanderers. Here not even a bird may pass.
Odysseus, also called Ulysses in Latin. Odysseus is important in mythology because he embodies the common man. Even though he was a king, he was still a human. Even though Odysseus had heroic traits, he still had flaws, and that was very appealing to the people who worshipped him. Some modern-day movies and books that allude to the story of Odysseus are the SpongeBob movie, in which SpongeBob receives a bag of wind, an SNL skit, which portrays the sirens, and the Percy Jackson books and movies, which shows Lotus Casino, which is referring to the Lotus Eaters who have permanently lost track of time. As one triumphant journey ends, another begins. With trials of faith and obstacles of strength alike, the crew arrived at the land of the Kikionians, that enslaved the men like cattle at the mercy of a single man's will. And yet hope was found when the power of intelligence prevailed, the tender nectar of the lotus flower, silently entrapping the bodies and souls of the valiant soldiers. Time ceased to exist as the clock ticks slowly, like honey pouring endlessly from a glass jar. I came swiftly upon the land of the Cyclops, and were met immediately by the gaze of a single soul-piercing eye. The eye soon devoured by a stake of anger and self-preservation.
Water and necessity, caution surrounded the land of the Aeolians, and the tribe bestowed upon Odysseus a gift, accompanied by a silent promise of his discretion. However, curiosity takes over the man's self-control. The strings of the bag are opened greedily. Out bursts the breeze with the force of 1,000 men. Upon his return to the land, he was denied another gift. At the hands of the higher power, Circe was an image of beauty, and yet cruelty inhabited her. With a revengeful hand, the goddess created swine of mere men, but the grace of a powerful messenger, they were saved.
The underworld called to the men like bees to honey, and with heavy hearts they entered the forbidden land. Misery struck Odysseus to his very core. He saw his mother roaming without a purpose about the streets of forgotten souls. Translucent bodies of light trudging silently about the hallowed halls of this deep pit of despair. Fear strikes the men as they are met by a soul of importance, a man of their own oars who fought among them in the great battle of Troy and the war against the sea, and yet he was not given the burial of a warrior.
The body of the forgotten man is without complaint recovered from the island of Aeoli and buried with honor as always meant to be. On this island 2 paths were laid before Odysseus of Ithaca, son of Laertes. Fate was his to take. A decision was made, lose 6 of his finest to save the rest, and Calypso came upon them like a rain, to a desert of harsh storms and forceful rays. With that, they are taken to her home, like orphans to a mother, with too much love to give.